everyone, it's Simi Shaw, and welcome to Trailblazers. On this podcast, I dive deep into the journeys of trailblazing South Asians, sharing the stories of the leaders and dreamers lighting the way across the South Asian diaspora. Before we get to today's episode, I want to tell you guys about a very special event we have coming up in New York City. Next Tuesday on April 4th, 2023, I will be hosting a live podcast with Anjala Acharya, legendary investor and manager to Priyanka Chopra Jonas. To get your tickets, you can visit our website, southasiantrailblazers.com. And to stay posted on upcoming events, subscribe to our newsletter on our website or find us on socials at South Asian Trailblazers on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and the like. And with that, here's a quick message from our partner this season, McKinsey & Company.
Find out about the biggest ideas in business on McKinsey's Insights app, where you can listen to podcasts like our flagship show, The McKinsey Podcast.
We're so not tuned in to the dynamic going on for the current employees, what matters to them most.
Or watch our Author Talk series featuring law professor Dorothy A. Brown.
60% of Black college students don't graduate. And when I came across that statistic, I got so depressed.
And read lots of articles within our many newsletters like Mind the Gap, which offers insight about Gen Z. To hear, see, and read more, download McKinsey's Insights app now.
I'm so excited to introduce you all to Pooja Bavishi, founder and CEO of Malai. Malai is an artisanal ice cream company with flavors inspired by the nostalgic, aromatic spices and ingredients of South Asian culture. Pooja had always wanted to be in the business of delivering happiness, aka desserts, and she founded Malai in 2015 following her graduation from the NYU Stern School of Business. She's incredibly hands-on in the everyday of Malai's operations, including the creation of their ice cream flavors, managing their brick-and-mortar scoop shop in Brooklyn, and expanding their presence through nationwide shipping in both grocery stores and on Goldbelly. She's previously claimed the title of champion after winning a battle on the Food Network's Chopped Sweets and was named one of Inc. magazine's Female Founders 100 in October 2020. She previously spent time in the world of urban planning, civil rights, and the broader universe of nonprofit and social impact work. She holds a BA from UNC Chapel Hill, an MS from the London School of Economics, and an MBA from NYU. As many of you know, I am absolutely partial to entrepreneurs building at the intersection of our culture. And before I even heard of Pooja, I heard all about her brand because it has caught on like wildfire. So excited to welcome Pooja onto the podcast today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Simi. I'm so excited to be here.
Now, what struck me about your story is that this powerful relationship you have with food has been a through line in your life. And it all began in your Indian immigrant household down in North Carolina. But I want to hear about those early influences that shaped your relationship with our culture through food.
I think that for a lot of first generations who are curious about their culture, food is a really easy entry point. You have access to it on a daily basis. And for me, I love food anyway. It wasn't necessarily just that I wanted this South Asian cultural experience. I love sweets. I really enjoy food. I love flavor, all of that. But really, I grew up with this longing for my parents' childhood. I felt this nostalgia for my parents growing up. And I almost felt like I missed out, that I didn't get to grow up the way that they did. They would talk so romantically about the way they grew up, drying mangoes on the rooftops and making pickles and taking rickshaws places and these film houses and standing up for the national anthem. All of these stories that are just so ingrained and embedded in my memory. I just really felt like I wanted to experience that. And the easiest entry point for me was food. And so like I really just loved being in the kitchen with my mom. My dad also is a hobbyist when it comes to cooking. And so he also would be in the kitchen. And I would just learn so much. And the thing about making things together is not just you're learning about that actual dish, which I did learn about and I loved hearing about it, but it's just this moment of coming together when you're in the kitchen with someone, and it's such a prime time for storytelling. I always felt like it was just this sacred moment where I would learn more and more about our culture just by me and my mom making kakra together, or me and my mom, like it was just like
I love kakra.
Yeah, it was just a way for me to hear stories either for the first time or for the 100th time, but it made me feel closer to the culture.
Yeah, that resonates with me a ton because I also sometimes feel this longing for the childhood my parents had. And obviously, I mean, they struggled immensely, but there was a certain simplicity about their life, a certain touch and feel with the environment that they grew up in that sometimes I'm like, I'm never going to have that. And so it makes sense that you were trying to access that through food.
And the truth is that I wouldn't have had that even if I grew up in India.
Yeah.
And I am so aware of that as well. But I think that it's this whole like passing on of generations of things that we will never experience, like you said. But I think that there's an added layer of that when you are first generation, because you don't have that same experience in the same country, in the same city, in the same ways that they did, but it's a part of you.
Yeah.
It influences so many of the things that you're doing. I didn't feel I was one way at home and like another way at school. Both of those things really completed me, and I felt very much like myself in my North Carolina school as well. I just wanted to absorb as much as I could.
I think that's really beautiful. Now, something that I enjoyed in learning and studying your story is that whenever someone asked you about your eventual long-term career plans, you always said, oh, I'm going to start my own dessert business, as a matter of fact. And so you clearly had these early inclinations towards meshing your passion for entrepreneurship with food, but you didn't take a linear path to Malai. After college, you spent time in urban planning, social impact, and even worked in new business development at the Food Network. Talk me through those early career decisions and how they laid the groundwork for Malai.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't think that anyone's path is linear.
Definitely not.
And I don't think that anyone's path should be. I think that people should pursue multiple interests, and it manifests in a variety of different ways. But for me, I had this very early interest in food. I certainly loved my desserts. And I knew that eventually I wanted to start my own dessert business. I also knew I had discovered social justice issues, especially growing up in North Carolina. I went to a private high school. All of those things kind of spurred on a lot of different interests and made me aware of a lot of things that eventually influenced my career path. And those were really deep interests of mine as well. And so I pursued a career in public policy. I worked at a civil rights agency right after I graduated from college and was working in fair and affordable housing. But simultaneously, I was making all of the desserts for all of my coworkers' birthdays. And they would hire me for their holiday parties and things like that. I had this like small little catering business on the side called Sweets by Pooja. Like I had this blog, as one does in the mid-2000s, and I would experiment with recipes.
I love it.
And so like I equally pursued everything that I was passionate about at the time. But like I was hoping, honestly, that I would be able to combine all of my interests when I started that business. And so when I eventually went to business school at NYU, I was like, what kind of dessert business can I open that would also address these housing issues that I'm so passionate about? And the truth is that business school is pretty straightforward in telling you you need to make money first. There has to be a bottom line. But that said, from the very beginning, the way that I incorporated my past career is to ensure that we're sourcing as ethically as possible. We're sourcing locally. We're making sure that we're working with companies that are paying farmers fair wages. We are using sustainable materials, even though it costs more. So everything that comes out of our store is compostable. All of our shipment packaging is compostable. And that does raise our costs, but it does also really prove what we're standing for, that we're a company that really believes in the longevity of it all as well. And so that's how I kind of of translated that,
Absolutely.
like my past career and my interests into an ice cream company. These values represent what I worked in before.
You brought up business school and you've spoken a bit publicly about how you went in with this intention of being a career switcher. I'm sure many of our listeners today are considering business school. You know, I'm going to business school in the fall. And the two main reasons we often hear people going to grad school is either to move up or move out, as they say. Can you speak a little bit to that intention and what you were really trying to get out of the experience, especially when you had this idea for a dessert business lurking in the back of your mind?
I went to business school with the intention of starting my own dessert business. That was the goal of me going to business school. But actually, what I really wanted to get out of it was, up until that point, all of my work, my internships, my actual jobs, all of the career-oriented work that I had done was in nonprofits. And I really felt like I personally did not have, at that stage in my career, the language to be able to start a business and to be in the same rooms and to be in the same conversations as those people who I would be speaking to start a business. And I just really wanted to develop that language and that skill. A business degree is a generalist degree. You know a little bit about a lot of things, but I didn't know anything about any of those things. And I think I just wanted to absorb as much material and as much knowledge as possible that I will eventually have an accountant, I knew, but I should know basic accounting. I will eventually have a CFO, but I should know how to model this out, right? Like I will eventually have a marketing agency, but I should know how to get started on what's top of mind, how to price everything, right? That is what it gave me. Honestly, I went in with that intention, and that is exactly what business school gave me. I know that a lot of people say that if you know you want to start your own business, you don't need a business degree. And I certainly think that that point is valid. For me, I was going in with very specific intentions, and I was able to get that out of business school. But I will say that when the time came, when everyone was recruiting and everyone was going through the job application process, I got sucked up into that too. And so, so even though I did know I wanted to start this business, I didn't really know what that looked like. I had all of these ideas. I had this notebook from, I don't know what year, maybe like after I graduated from college.
Oh, yes. I want to talk about the notebook.
to when I was in business school, of just ideas. Bakeries and lunch spots and just candy and just whatever it was. I had all of these ideas of what this business looked like, but nothing really felt right. And so I got caught up in the whole, let's apply for jobs, let's see what happens. And there was a couple of things that happened simultaneously. Retrospectively, it was this aha moment. Of course, it didn't feel that way at the time. But one was I was talking to business school professor of mine who had become a mentor. And I was just like, I really don't know what kind of job I want. Nothing really feels like it's the right fit. And he was like, well, Pooja, you're applying for like every job known to man. You are applying for marketing jobs. You're applying for strategy jobs. You're even applying for finance jobs. Like, what do you want to do? And I responded, I will never forget this. I responded by saying, well, I want to do it all. And he said, well, it turns out that the only way you can do it all is starting that dessert business of yours. And so he said that.
Wow.
Simultaneously, my dad and I had a conversation, and my parents have been entrepreneurs my entire life. I had seen the ups and downs of their businesses and been like really exhilarating and inspiring, but also, you know, a little scary. And he was like, Pooja, you'll get a job, and then what? And I was like, Dad, like like this is, I don't know where you want me to go with this. And he was like, you'll get a job, you'll make money, then what? And I was like, I don't know, Dad, like I will lead a nice life in New York. And he was like, okay, you'll get a bonus, you'll get a raise the next year, then what? And I was like, Dad, I have no idea what you are getting at. What are you saying? And he was like, it's time for you to build something. You're a builder. Time to build.
Wow.
And I think those two things, simultaneously making ice cream for the first time. And I think that this was the kicker, that I had made all of these desserts my entire life, and I had literally never made ice cream. I had never even touched an ice cream maker. And I had friends over for Friendsgiving. I have an annual vegetarian Friendsgiving.
I love it.
And I always make the dessert, of course, right? Like that is my thing. But for the first time, I made ice cream to go along with it. My mom helps me move into every apartment that I ever have, and she always stocks aside with a bunch of Indian things. And it's not abnormal, it's not special, like it's a part of my kitchen, right? And I just grabbed 2 spices from there and flavored the ice cream. I wasn't trying to do anything special. It was like a very normal thing for me to do. And what I didn't realize is that dairy and butterfat carry spice so beautifully. It's such a beautiful carrier of flavor. And so it robustly flavored this ice cream that I made. And my friends at Friendsgiving were like, we've never had anything like this before. And going back to that childhood nostalgia, longing for my parents' childhood and being so curious about my culture, but feeling like myself at school and everything, I just felt like this was me in a product. You cannot get more Americana than ice cream. Everyone has an ice cream memory. Everyone has an ice cream story. There's not a single person I've ever come across that doesn't. But yet, this is like the flavors that I grew up with that were really familiar to me and that are enjoyed by millions of people around the country and around the world. This is the product that I should move forward with.
Wow. So you have the support and encouragement from this professor, from parents, from friends. When do you finally actually make the leap to start Malai, and what did that look like?
In my mind now, which probably at this point, the timeline is a little skewed, but in my mind now, all of that happened within like 36 hours of each other. But likely it didn't. Likely it was a couple of weeks. But I do remember that November 2014 was this inflection point. I really felt like everything was kind of pushing me towards this. I was Googling starting an ice cream business, right? And I was kind of figuring out what that looked like. And I noticed that there was this course at Penn State for commercial ice cream making. It's actually a pretty well-known, famed course that a lot of big companies have gone to. They have a creamery, they have a dairy there. And it was in January, and NYU has a J term. And so I had January off. So I decided to enroll for that. And so in December, all of this definitely happened in November, but in December, I can't even tell you, Simi, like when I decided to name it Malai. Again, in my head, it was always called Malai. And then pretty soon after that, I decided to go to this course. I established the LLC soon after. It happened very, very quickly. I just decided to go for it. And then I sold my first scoop 3 weeks after I graduated.
My gosh. Wow. So I want to spend a second on the minutia of actually starting this business, because I like to dig into this because I don't think it's something that we talk about enough. You enroll in this course, you do a bunch of Googling, how do you start an ice cream business? What are some of those other initial steps you took to actually launch Malai? Did you raise money? Did you recruit a team? How did you go about developing the flavors, et cetera?
Yeah, well, I was a business school student, so let's keep that in mind. So for that last semester of business school, I had so many focus groups where I invited my classmates to come to my...
People wanted to be friends with you, I'm sure. They're like, this is the girl we can get free ice cream from.
Yeah, exactly. Like I would hold these focus groups, quote unquote, in my apartment and have my business school classmates come over and give their feedback. I would have very pointed questions, and each focus group would focus on something different: price point, flavor, the texture, what stores they shop, all of that stuff. I would focus on something different in every single focus group. I also, because I was still in school, all of the conferences that happened, I would go to all of those conferences and sample there, and I would have surveys there.
Wow.
And so everyone would get a free scoop if they filled out a survey. I think I just threw them out actually when I moved to this apartment, but I had stacks and stacks of surveys of asking every single question. The thing is that we're in 2023 right now, and we really wouldn't think twice about some of these flavors. I have the experience of experience, obviously. But at that time, it truly felt like it was a little bit of a leap. Were these audiences, was this New York crowd ready for a rose-flavored ice cream, for a chai-flavored ice cream? Is this too big of a shift? Is it too big of a leap? I was honestly, that first year, all of 2015 actually, it really felt like it was a beta year, trying to gather as much data as possible and trying to make sure that there's a market for this. And so I did all of that my last semester. New York's a really great place to start a food business. There's so many opportunities to sell. And so I applied for Hester Street, which is this weekend food fair on the Lower East Side. And it is so, so kind to small businesses. It gives so many small businesses a chance. And so I basically read their application and read what the requirements were. And I was like, okay, I need a food handler's permit. Okay, I need this permit from the DOH. Okay, great. So I will go and apply for all of those things, which is what I did. I obviously established the business part of it, the LLC, which is pretty straightforward to do. Obviously, I had the resource of my parents because they had started their own business before, but not a food business. And so I would join these Facebook groups of women in food, women in hospitality, and ask questions or like try to meet with people, anyone who would meet with me. I was part of this mentorship program very early on. I applied for it. And the founder of Ovenly became my official mentor, Agatha Kulaga, who is still such a sounding board and such a friend and colleague in the business. And so she helped me out at the beginning. And so, like I said, I sold that first scoop 3 weeks after I graduated and just had a weekend business. And honestly, I had no one else. It was just me. I was making the ice cream in my Manhattan apartment. I had this ice cream maker that made half gallon at one time. Basically, Monday through Friday, I would just make ice cream, and I got chest freezers, and my apartment was so ridiculous looking. I got all these chest freezers, and
I'd love to see a photo
everything
of this.
was like stacked up in there and boxes everywhere. And then I sent out a Google spreadsheet to all of my friends within a 4-hour driving distance to New York. And I was like, sign up for a weekend. And Simi, I have never felt so grateful in my entire life. I was just within 30 minutes every single weekend in the summer was filled with all of my friends.
Wow.
I got so much support from them. And they came up and we sold ice cream all weekend. And that is how the first summer of Malai went. What's so funny / serendipitous is that in August of that year, we were at Hester Street Fair and New York Times food writer Jeff Gordon-Onier walked by and he asked for a sample of the sweet corn saffron. And so I gave him a sample and he was like, this is amazing. I'm going to put you in touch with Florence Fabricant and you should drop off samples to her. And 2 weeks later, we had our first piece of press in the New York Times. And so that then catapulted everything else, like my first hire, us figuring out shipping nationwide, us figuring out CPG. Opportunities lead to other things, right? And it just changed what I was Googling. So I was like Googling how to start an ice cream business, and then I was Googling how to ship ice cream. Right now, the Google searches are different. You never stop Googling.
True.
But yeah, that's kind of how the first year went.
Wow, what an amazing story. I love the hustle of making these gallons of ice cream.
Half gallons.
In your apartment. half gallons. It sounds like when you initially launched Malai, you intended to initially enter the e-commerce market, but then you actually end up opening a brick and mortar shop in 2019 in Brooklyn. You're opening up another location in Manhattan in just a few short months and have plans for continued physical expansion. Can you share a bit about why and how this strategy evolved?
Yeah, absolutely. So I never wanted to be judged on service, interestingly enough. I only wanted to be judged on product. And so I never wanted a brick and mortar shop. I wanted to be a CPG company. I wanted to be able to have the capabilities for e-commerce, grocery store retail, and really that was it. That's all I wanted. And to change the perception of ice cream as a result. Our goals were big, even back then. Our goals were international expansion and really changing the way the ice cream market was perceived. It should feel as typical and as normal to pull a pint of masala chai from your grocery store freezer as it is a pint of cookies and cream. Always the goal. But we went to a trade show, and a trade show is specifically for grocery store retail. And we went to a trade show and we were in this like new brands aisle. And I just honestly, so much imposter syndrome. I felt so inadequate being there. We were with all of these other brands that were in Whole Foods nationwide. They were in Target. They were just killing it. And we were in specialty food shops around New York City and then doing these fairs and markets because in New York, that's how you get the word out, right? And we didn't have any funding. It was all bootstrapped at that point. And so it was really eye-opening for me that we just hadn't hit these milestones the way these other small businesses had. and these other small new businesses had. They were new like Malai was. This was in 2016. And I remember the number of people, and this trade show, I should mention, it's one of the largest trade shows, food trade shows in the country, and it happens to be in New York. All of these people walked by and they're like, oh my God, Pooja, you're Pooja, right? I saw you at Smorgasburg, or I met you at Hester Street Fair. You were wearing your UNC hat. You went to UNC, right? And like they had such a connection. I was selling. I was the one out there. I was the one who was scooping every single day. And they had such a connection to me. In return, I had such a connection to them. And I remembered so many of them. And I realized what the power is of actually knowing who your customers are. I started thinking about hospitality, and a lot of people get into food because they love hospitality. And I love it too. I love all aspects of hospitality, which also has to do with the service component. And I was thinking about my grandmother, my mom's mom, who's had incredible influence in my life. And she didn't speak any English. And yet a lot of our friends visited her house in India when they would go. And they would all come out being like, your grandmother is the warmest person I have ever met. She is so kind. She is so lovely. And she managed to do that without language. And she did that with food. More than anything, she did that with food. Yeah. And I was like, how do we create this? I'm sharing so much of my culture and upbringing with this product. Yeah. How do we also do that through people coming to us, through the service aspect, through the hospitality aspect? And so then I came up with this plan of, okay, we have to have a brick and mortar, but we're not going to be just another ice cream shop in New York, right? It's going to feel like everyone's welcome and everyone should leave happy. And it's an ice cream shop and everyone should feel that joy. Even if they've never had these flavors before, even if we don't speak the same language, that they feel leaving so happy, so welcome, so warm. And that is what we're going to stand for with service. And I will say that if we get a negative review because someone doesn't like our product, okay, fine. I can accept that. Everyone has different tastes. I don't understand it, but I can accept it. But if we ever get a negative review on service, I will write back. Immediately, I will be like, what can we do better to make you feel you should have gotten a better experience there? Because I never want to make you feel like you shouldn't have had a good experience here.
Wow. I love that. And I respect it a ton. And I think it's so fascinating because I come from a hospitality background just growing up. And I totally understand it's a really difficult space to be in and delivering that level of service. But I love how critically you've thought about what you're giving to the customer and just knowing your customer, as they always say. Obviously, you touched on the fact that when you started this in 2015, I don't think South Asian culture was as accessible as it feels now. We're obviously trending even further in that direction. And food businesses are also just notoriously complex to operate. Did you have any doubts, and what sort of challenges did you face with respect to bringing a South Asian-inspired brand to the broader market?
I think for me, it's always been about storytelling. I'm always going to go back to that moment in the kitchen where you just are really peaceful and it's a sacred moment where you're just telling stories. That's what we're doing at Malai. Through the ice cream, that seems so simplistic, but it's so true. Through the ice cream, I'm just telling a story. Every single one of our pints has a story in the back of it explaining what was that inspiration behind that flavor. When we decided to do that, when the team decided to do that, and I started writing these stories for every single flavor that we created, I thought that would actually alienate people more. I thought that would be like, okay, well, you decided to do it this way, but I don't have this connection. But of course it didn't, right? Because people connect through words. They connect through shared memories, shared thoughts, shared experiences. And so even though they didn't have that exact experience, they connected so much more to the product. One of my favorite company stories is right at the very beginning in 2015, when I first was selling at Hester Street Fair. That day, I happened to be solo. I remember this. And I was debuting our orange fennel flavor for the very first time. And as you know, fennel seeds are so ubiquitous to Indian culture, right? They are palate cleansers, they're digestive aids, and they're also delicious. And I love fennel seeds and I love the licorice flavor, and I just brightened it up with some orange zest. So I made the orange fennel, and this woman bought a scoop and walked away. And then as I did, I kind of just followed her with my eyes, like just checking to see if she liked it or not. And she turned around and started walking back towards me. And I was like, all right. I literally pulled out her cash to give back to her. Like oh my gosh. I literally thought that she like just hated it. And she said, I just wanted to let you know that my Italian grandmother used to make orange and anise cookies, and I haven't had this flavor since she's passed. So I just wanted to thank you. And I was just like blown away that this is exactly why I started Malai, right? This storytelling, this connection that we create through food, it's powerful and it's unspoken, but it's there. Yes, I am creating Indian-inspired ice creams. I'm creating these flavors that I grew up with that feel very familiar to me. But I'm going to guarantee that even if you didn't grow up the same way that I did, because you didn't, even if you are Indian American, even if you are first gen, you did not grow up the same way that I did. You're going to relate to these flavors. They're going to create a moment of nostalgia for you. And even if they don't, this company, this shop, this experience is going to be a part of your story now. And I think that is what makes it so special.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful sentiment and clearly just captures the ethos of your brand. Something that I love about what you're building is the cultural pieces you've infused go beyond just the flavors. I saw that you had a flavor named Kamala after the vice president, which incorporated lotus seeds because Kamala means lotus in Sanskrit. And I'm curious, what other Easter eggs can we look for in the Malai brand?
So that one's called Madam Vice President because we did want to shorten it to MVP.
I love that.
Honestly, I will say that we did a lot of this when I was a lot more hands-on in the actual selling part of it, when I was scooping and stuff like that. One of the things that I love about Indian culture is honoring people, honoring each other, right? And so if you go to a shop, this happened to me a lot when I would visit India, is that I would go to a shop and I would be the first customer and they would give me something. They would either give me a coin or give me something to be like, my day's going to be good today because you were my first customer. My day's going to go well today. There's so much like spirituality and auspiciousness when it comes to Indian culture anyway, but I also just find that to be so beautiful. And so at Smorgasburg, we had this bucket full of Malai pins. We would always give a pin to our first customer, just being like, thank you for being our first customer. Our day's going to go well today. So that we always did when we were selling outside. I think that also the month of March is really important to us. I actually established the LLC in March, which I had forgotten for a really long time and just saw. Yeah, we established the LLC in March. We opened the storefront in March. We consider March 1st to be ice cream season, the peak ice cream season. March 1st happens to be my birthday. And so March is not actually ice cream season. Let's just be honest. In New York, it's still like there might be snow on the ground.
I was a little confused, but
like internally, we always say March 1st is ice cream season because we have this ramp up period, right? And so we're always like, March 1st is coming, March 1st is coming. And so I think that around March as well, we will always, even though it's still considered winter, even though it might not be as successful as our other launches, we will always have a launch in March, some kind of launch, just because we want to start off on the right foot. We want to celebrate these anniversaries that we have and like have that moment of celebration, make sure we internally recognize that we made it another year and then go into our peak season.
Wow. Now, I want to spend a second again and taking a step back. You've obviously achieved this immense success from the press, from the brand that you've built. I heard about it many, many months ago and then felt like I saw it everywhere the volley season. I'm curious, beyond the standard metrics of profit and growth, when did you consider yourself to be a successful business?
What a question. I think the measures of success are constantly changing. I think that those numbers are really important. That is what is going to determine the feasibility of the business, the financial viability of the business, the growth of the business, all of that. Of course. I think that hitting those financial milestones has been really important to me and continues to be, and those continue to change as we continue to hit them. But what I recognize as that success is actually recognizing the fact that those goalposts keep getting further, right? We've actually hit the ones that we wanted to hit. And looking back, some of the things that we would have considered so far-fetched and ridiculous and how do we even accomplish that has become a part of our daily lives now. And so like recognizing that and recognizing the fact that we had to further our goalposts because we've already surpassed it is what the measure of success is for me. It's never ending. Achieving success is never ending. And I think that that's really exciting, especially for people who have their own businesses. There's a very certain personality that people who have.
I know the type.
And so especially knowing that you always want more, I think that especially in the past couple of years, especially when the pandemic was happening and it was in its peak, I think that's when I really realized to always take that step back and just recognize how far we've come and that these things that seem so easy and so second nature to us right now were really, really hard at the beginning. And the fact that they're not anymore, that is a measure of success.
I love that. And I think it's something that many of us, regardless of what we're building or doing in our day-to-day lives, need to take a step back and recognize, because otherwise I think we create the syndrome of just waiting to achieve the next thing, which is good because it keeps you motivated. But I think you have to appreciate the wins and be like, this thing that used to be so hard or so daunting is something we don't think twice about anymore.
Exactly. The muscle memory kicks in and you don't even realize it.
What have been the hardest parts of running this business?
Well, I think that actually running the business, the frozen aspect is quite challenging. That like trying to transport a frozen product and keeping it frozen at all times using third parties has been really, really challenging. But actually speaking about running a business and being a little bit more thoughtful about this answer is that it's lonely. Running a business can be really lonely, especially at the beginning, but certainly there are aspects of it all the time. But at the beginning, you're the only one that believes in what you're doing. Like, of course, you have your network, you have the people who are closest to you, and they're going to keep you going. But in the day-to-day, I was just talking to a friend about this the other day, that I have this like very distinct, clear memory from like 2016 or 2017. I can't even remember what year it was, but all we were doing, we were just selling at Smorgasburg on the weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays. And what my week looked like is that on Mondays, I would catch up on email. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we would go to our shared kitchen space and make ice cream. We would make all of this ice cream. And Friday would be a logistics day where we're planning out what we're bringing when and like all of this stuff. Saturday, I would wake up at 6 a.m., go get a U-Haul, take it to the shared kitchen space where my operations manager would meet me. We would load up our cart, our tent. It was physical labor.
Wow.
We would go to Smorgasburg, we would unload, and we would sell all day, pack up the truck, and do it again on Sunday. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I didn't have that much to do. I only was making ice cream, answering emails, right? I didn't have that much business. We were selling twice a week, but it was a very different kind of exertion than I have right now. And I remember I went to go park the U-Haul and I just broke down crying. I just was so tired. Although I see that Pooja and I understand where she was at that moment, I judge that Pooja right now, right? Wow. Like, I'm just like, oh, baby Pooja, you have no idea what's coming. You have no idea how much harder you're going to work, right? And I just think that, of course, those emotions were valid. I was lonely. I was scared. There was all of this opportunity to fail. There was all of this opportunity to leave it. No one cared at that point. There were no livelihoods based on what I was doing. Like, it didn't matter, right? There was no substance. What was I doing? Making ice cream in the most crowded field that you could think of? Like, what was I doing? Those thoughts were constant. Now, I can't have those thoughts because I have this responsibility. Yeah. It doesn't matter. I've already done it. I did make this decision where I've entered this really crowded market and I am making ice cream and that is my livelihood and I do provide livelihoods. And so I sure as hell not fail because there's a lot of people who are dependent on me. So it's a different kind of pressure. And I would say that they're both really real and they're both really raw. They both are going to constantly be present at different levels. But that is a part of this process. It's a part of this journey. And something that I feel like you cannot explain to another entrepreneur or an emerging entrepreneur, I should say. I feel like another entrepreneur will get it just like this, right? They completely understand that. But until you go through it, you don't understand it. And you can't really warn someone, you can't really tell someone that this is the part that is not easy. And you just have to get through it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your honesty and also vulnerability, because I think this is a conversation we should have more often. We just did a reflection on our past 50 episodes and talked a lot about how the founders on our podcast have come on and been really candid and real, as you have, about the fact that it's a lonely journey. It's a tough journey. The pressure shape shifts, but it's still constant. So I appreciate you being candid in that respect, because I don't think we talk about it enough. Mm-hmm. Now, you brought up the fact that ice cream is a crowded category. In that vein, there's this incredible New York Times piece about this unexpected relationship you built with Jenny Britton-Bauer, who is the founder of Jenny's Splendid Ice Creams, who is, of course, one of the female entrepreneurs who literally changed what this category looked like by introducing artisanal ice cream. What have you learned from mentors like her? How has that shaped your approach to this industry?
I agree with you. I think Jenny's completely recalibrated the market. And I think that what she has done as a leader in the field has been nothing short of incredible. It truly has completely changed the ice cream market and what it can be. Ice cream was so stagnant for so long, and she introduced the fact that you can use local dairy, you can use whole ingredients, everything can be more delicious than what you expect it to be. I think what I learned most from Jenny, though, because I met her early on in my journey. I was part of a shared kitchen space in Brooklyn, and there was this mentor series, and she was a mentor that came in. I, of course, signed up for her right away. I think that what she has taught me is the community aspect. All of these people who are doing this together, right? They're doing it separately. Everyone has their own journey, but we're ultimately doing it together. I met her once, and I was itty bitty Malai with 1 year of experience, and we spent like 20 minutes together. And I have a picture from there, of course, from then, of course. But every single trade show after that, if she was there, she sought me out and she said hi. She asked how things are going. She asked how she could help. If I were to reach out to her, she always responds. Everyone has their own journey, and ultimately we are all competitors. But for her to recognize that we are all ultimately doing the exact same thing, I think it just, for me, someone who did not come from the food industry, someone who did not come from the hospitality world, and who's just trying to create things from scratch. For me, what it showed is that the hospitality industry really does live up to its name, and people are always there, who are ahead of you, who are behind you, who have experiences that will always be relevant, and you just need to reach out to them.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, again, it just seems to be a beautiful part of sort of the community you're even building around your brand. You mentioned how this is not a space that you necessarily came into with experience. And I'm curious, as a South Asian woman in the culinary world, leading a brand that has such heavy ties to Indian culture and flavors, what surprised you?
What has surprised me? Things surprise me every single day. I think that in general, in the food industry, everyone says that when you start your own business, you have to have grit. I will tell you, Simi, as a person, as a Pisces, as someone who wears all
it's
of
Pisces season.
Exactly. As someone who wears all of her emotions on her sleeves, inherently, I don't have that. I am not.
I'm surprised to hear you say that.
That's not something that comes naturally to me. I'm a really hard worker. I'm a second child, right? So second children have to be hard workers because the first children are like the golden children, right? My sister is exactly that. Are you first?
I'm a second child, and this is resonating.
And so, the second children always have to work a little bit harder. And so I've always been a really, really hard worker. But things don't come naturally to me. The reason why I have to work hard is because it doesn't come easily to me. And so figuring things out, just the pure sense of we gotta just make things work is something I had to teach myself. It's something that I had to work hard at as I've gone through the journey of developing Malai. And it's possible. It's possible to teach yourself that. And I think that that's something for, aspiring entrepreneur out there. But it is hard, right? There is a certain aspect of it where you just have to make things work.
Absolutely.
Certainly Malai is my baby, and I will do anything to make things work. I will do anything to make things a success. And all of that is true. But there is this aspect of this doesn't come naturally to me. And I think that when I got into the food industry and when I started seeing all of these businesses, what I realized is that it doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. It certainly is a very required quality. The show must go on. It's a service-based industry. Yeah. It has to go on. And you just figure things out. There's this class at UNC, and it was one of the senior spring classes, and it was called How Things Work. The number of times that I thought about how I should have taken that at the very early stages of Malai is unreal.
Wow. I love your inclination to learn. You're like, I'm going to go to business school and learn this. I'm going to take this ice cream course at Penn State. I should have taken
it out there.
It's so clear. I love it. I love it. Malai is going to establish its first ever presence in Manhattan. Huge congratulations to you at the new food hall, Market 57. You've clearly grown tremendously over the last 8 years with so many more exciting opportunities on the horizon. Yeah. What's your 5-year vision? What's your 10-year vision? What else is on the horizon?
Yeah. This feels like a big year for Malai. So we are opening in Market 57 in April of this year, which is crazy. That is curated by the James Beard Foundation. And so the co-tenancy is absolutely amazing. And we're so fortunate to be with so many other women-owned, BIPOC-owned brands and businesses that have just truly made a presence for themselves in New York City. I'm really excited to have Manhattan presence. I feel like one of the running jokes in the shop is that people come from all over. They tell us that, and they're like, oh, I came from North Carolina. Oh, I came from Florida. I came from, wherever it is. But the biggest deal is when someone's like, I came from Manhattan. And so,
I can honestly totally see myself doing that.
And so for our loyal customer base in Manhattan, we're going to have presence there. And I'm very excited about that.
I love it.
We are, fingers crossed, there's a couple more I's to dot and T's to cross, but we're hopefully opening in LA soon. And so that is the first time I have announced that publicly. And so very, very exciting. We are also thinking about other markets, which I'm not ready to announce yet, but we are thinking about.
Totally fair. We're excited about LA.
Other markets as well by the end of this year, beginning of next year. But really, I will say that the primary goal from 2015 to now hasn't changed, which I've really believed that Malai will be an internationally recognized brand. And the subcontinent's diaspora is the largest in the world. And our target demographics, it's not a mass market product. It's very niche, but there's a lot of opportunity there. And it's certainly our local Brooklyn crowds who love to support a small business and who are excited about new flavors, but it's also the South Asians who are really nostalgic about these flavors and are excited to see the flavors that they grew up with presented in a new and innovative and fresh way. And so we want to go after both of those markets. So we're hoping that we will be able to expand internationally by the end of 2025 and have stores in certain markets abroad.
Very, very exciting. And what about store shelves?
Store shelves as well. So the way we want to do it is that without getting too much into the nitty-gritty of the CPG industry, the way we want to do it is that where we do have brick and mortar presence, we want to really saturate and expand the number of doors that we're in there in those markets and surrounding. So hopefully we'll see that expansion in the next 8 to 12 months as well.
That makes a lot of sense. People have the opportunity to come in the store and try it, and then they feel inclined to go to the grocery store and actually buy it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Now, the last question I have for you, but also plug I'm going to make, especially for all our Northeast-based friends, is to go visit your shops in Brooklyn, soon Manhattan, eventually LA, and to show their love with their wallets. But also, before I tell them to do that, I have to ask you to pick favorites and tell me what your favorite flavor of Malai ice cream is.
Okay, so love all of my ice cream babies equally. Let's just put that out there right now. But I will say that the orange fennel is one of my most favorites. I especially love it with the Turkish coffee, with chocolate sauce on top. That is my ideal dessert. That is like my number one favorite dessert. Then I become really partial to our seasonal flavors because I hadn't seen them in a couple of months or almost a year. So I love fig on fig in the summer. I'm always anticipating Hugra and Diwali, Tundai during Holi. Tundai is going to be scooped next week. I'm really excited about that. Just the other day, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so good. And my GM was like, you always say that. I was like, well, if I don't, who will, right? And so...
Just a little bit of subjectivity in there. No, I love it. Pooja, thank you so much for joining me on Trailblazers today and for taking the time to share your story. I think what you have built is so unique, especially in just seeing this fusion of food and South Asian culture in a really unique way that I at least haven't seen or experienced before, and just really excited to see where Malai goes and where you take it.
Thank you, Simi. I'm so glad that you're doing this and you're highlighting South Asians. I love the podcast, and so I'm so happy to be on it.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us for today's episode. If you want to get new episodes straight to your inbox, subscribe to our newsletter at southasiantrailblazers.com and follow us at South Asian Trailblazers on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.